All right. It looks
Oh, here
like
we are.
that's
Hey, man, how are you?
yeah. Hey.
Well, thanks for. I know that when meetings go long, the last thing you want to do is hop on another thing. So thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it.
Oh no, this one's fun. The other ones were I lament being in charge of many other people's lives. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm dying to talk to you about that. We'll get to that in a little bit,
okay.
but yeah, I just want to. Uh, I gotta say that when I do these interviews, my first question has always been to some unsuspecting guest, have you ever played Phantasmagoria 2 before? And pretty much everyone looks at me sheepishly and goes, no, I never got around to it. But I know that you have because I was there.
Well, it's interesting because I never really got around to it. So no, yeah, that was great. What a fun episode that was to do too. That was and the fans seemed to really like it, and that was yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
So
that was a
I didn't really know what to expect because before that I had never played it, and I wasn't really familiar with it at all. So, and Dan was very excited because he already knew all y'all.
right,
Um,
right.
but I walked in and y'all were so cool, like right away, and like
That was a
so.
fun time. You guys had a good vibe over there, and it was an interesting day for me on a lot of levels because I had met Tori. I never met Tori until
That's right. That was
this
the
last
first
couple
time
of
you
years.
met her in
And
person.
yeah, so we met for coffee a little bit before then, and she's just so cool, and it was just a lot of fun. And I have to tell you a story. This may not make it in the video that we ultimately release, but you have to hear this because it's just hilarious. So we do the interview with you guys, or we do the gameplay, and we have a blast. And then as we're leaving, you guys are like, hey, you should grab a t-shirt or something on your way out. So we're like, sure. So we grab a t-shirt, and they've got these guys. For anybody's watching, they've got their office, and part of the office is the where all the shelving and stuff is for their merchandise. So we grab a few things, and then you're both like, oh no, you got to grab this, and so you give us like a water bottle, and then we get like, oh, you got to get some pajamas for your kids, and so we're just getting stocked up with all this
Yeah.
stuff. And by the end, we have just handfuls and handfuls of swag, and it was so cute. It was just, in fact, I'll have to show you a picture of my kids wearing all your stuff.
I think you did. You sent me a picture. It was
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So
that. Well,
so
but I mean, we're just so proud of our merch. Like, it's just like, please,
it's
it's so cool. I swear.
and it's good quality. I mean, it's really good quality stuff. And it's not this isn't cheap material. That water bottle, my son swears by it. He loves it. It's great.
Yeah,
So
it's the only water bottle I use. Not to not to hawk my merch on your show.
so anyways, Tori and I leave, we say goodbye to you guys, and we walk back, and we were at some coffee shop, 8 blocks or so away, maybe half a mile or whatever. So we're walking back, having a good time, and she invited me to dinner to meet her husband and her son. And so as we go back to her car, she said, I'll text you, our address. And so she leaves. I walk over to my car, and I put the merch in the car, and then I'm like, oh shit, I don't have my phone, and I don't have it with me. And I'm like, where? And I'm looking everywhere. I look in the bags; they're not in there. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm visiting LA. I'm staying in a friend's house. So I don't know where I am. I'm just GPSing it. So I don't even know where my friend lives. And I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? Because it's Sunday. We've been gone for like 20 minutes, and I know you guys are gone. And the only thing I can think is, well, I got to go back. Maybe someone's still there. So I take off. I start running back towards the office, and I'm running, and I'm out of shape and totally, sweating and wearing this. I'm wearing like some sport coat or something. And I get about halfway there, and I'm winded. I take a break, and then I'm like, wait, why am I running? I have my car. I have keys to the car. I could just get in the car and drive. It would have taken me 5 minutes, but now I'm more than halfway there. And so I have to keep going. And then I finally get back to the building. Lights are all off. I'm knocking on the door, and there's nothing. And it's dark now. And I'm just like, I do not know what I'm gonna do. I don't know how I'm gonna get from here to anywhere. And just as I'm feeling like, holy shit, I'm in a weird position, I hear a car door open and then you pop out in a
Yeah.
parking lot and you're like, dude, what's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, he's here. So the funny part is we go in and, uh, and my phone's not in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're like, I don't know what to do, man. I can give you a ride back to the car. Maybe it's in the one of the bags. I go, no, I looked in the bags, and but yeah, we decided to do that. So we get in your car, and this is the part that cracks me up: is that we're driving back towards where my car is, and you're driving slow, assuming that it must be just right around the corner.
Yeah.
And I'm going, nope, keep going.
Yeah. Just all the way down to the next light. Like,
And then
oh, really?
another light. Yeah. And you were like, did you like walk all the way back here? And I'm so embarrassed at this point. So I'm like, yeah, you did. So we get back to the car and I go in and I look through the first bag. I just empty everything out. There's nothing. I'm looking on the ground. There's nothing. I finally empty the second bag and I hear this thunk. And the phone was there the entire time.
Oh,
I didn't
man.
need to do any of that stuff.
That's how it always goes.
It's how it always goes. But yeah,
Yeah, but
you
what a fun story though. And like I there must have been something like serendipitous about that because usually I just like bail right away. But there was just something I was like I was on my phone like checking messages or something in my car. So it
Yeah, that
was
would have. Oh man, that was crazy. So, anyways, that was a great night. I got ended up with a good story. I ended up going to their house. Tori's husband wrote the movie that's getting all these awards, the Holdovers with Paul Giamatti.
oh yeah.
So we went to their house and he was really cool. And so it was just a great night altogether.
That's
But
awesome.
anyways, enough about me. I want to uh I really want to talk about Game Grumps and what you're doing, but I'd love to know a little bit more about where you're from Florida, right? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Florida. My brain turned on in New Hampshire. We lived there very briefly, but then we moved back to Florida.
So you were born in New Hampshire, or are you?
I was born in Florida and then we moved to New Hampshire when I was like 2. And then that's when I like started having memories. So I don't have any memories of the first house from
Right,
Florida.
right.
Um,
What
so
brought your family from Florida to New Hampshire and back?
my mom's side of the family, they're all living in New Hampshire. So we had like a big support up there and my dad had a job there, but then he got a better job in Florida.
Okay. And what do your folks do, or what did they do?
Um oh, geez. My dad was like he worked in tech, so it's like he didn't have the same job with every company that he went to. Like coming up, he was like he worked on like power poles and shit. But it was
Oh,
a lot of
wow.
like it was a lot of phone technology, a lot of like hold systems and
Uh,
stuff.
was he
When that
out in the field? Was he actually, or was he? You said power poles. Was he actually up on the power poles and doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was phone poles, not power
Phone
poles. I
poles.
think
Yeah.
it was mostly like phone work that he was doing. But when I was alive, he was all like just working, at a desk a company that the one that I remember the most is that they were specialized in like on hold systems. So that was his like business that he was a part of.
Gotcha. And is he still around?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Is he still working and doing
He's
all the stuff?
retired.
Retired? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And your mom, I think I read she works with horses. She does horse therapy. Is that right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so she's very good with she just has a way with horses. Um but she runs a charity called Healing Horse Therapy Center where it's like, you know, veterans that have PTSD or like sexual trauma sufferers or like special needs people, like they found that like a lot of animal work is just very healing
Yeah.
to the mind and to the soul. And she's very good with kids. I mean, she's very good with everyone. She's a very affable person. Um, but she has a lot of experience with like special needs kids and stuff because she worked at another similar type of charity. Um, but this is her own one, and it helps a lot of people.
That's fantastic. How long and is she been running this for a while now? Has this been her? I'm sure it kind of
I'm
worked
so
its
bad
way
with
towards something.
time.
Yeah.
I want to say it's been over a decade.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Cool.
Which
And
should
so
probably
growing up in Florida, do you have brothers and sisters, or you?
Yeah, I have an older brother. He's
Okay.
exactly 3 years older, 3 years and a day older than me. So we have a
I'm 3 years. My younger brother's just like less like one day less than 3 years. Yeah, so we're 3 years, but he has like 2 days I think where we're only 2 years apart. So that's always been a thing. And then my kids
oh
are just
wow.
almost exactly 3 years apart too. Yeah. So
That's so it's so interesting. I hear that all this. I have a friend that's the same way. Is that his older brother is exactly one day
that's
older.
fascinating.
It's like almost like
Yeah.
they just decided right away, like this is awesome. You know?
You needed a little bit of a break and then you
Yeah.
get through it. Um, so what was Florida like growing up in the early days?
It's that suburban, just not my thing. I'm a very like free spirit, so if I can bike somewhere, I'll bike somewhere. I like walking around and exploring. So there wasn't much to explore there. It was all just suburban neighborhoods, and like I had a
Yeah.
lot of really cool friends there, but like I got no love for Florida, man. Like it's just
Me neither. Me
it's a
neither.
tough. I love wearing jackets and like weird outfits and stuff, so it was just like unfeasible there. I would force the issue. I'd like wear long jackets, and it would be like 80% humidity and like 98 degrees, and I'm still like, no, but it's my thing. I wear jackets. So
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California, so I had you know, similar in the sense of it was just constantly the same temperature. It was always warm.
mhm.
I was beach community. Were you near I'm sure you were near the water, right? Were you
Technically, but
technically?
I wasn't like a beach guy or anything. So
Right, right. But yeah, I couldn't wait to get out of there after a while. I just needed change, just the idea that it's just always the same freaking weather and it never,
yeah,
it just drove me nuts. So,
yeah.
uh,
Traditional seasons I really really enjoy because
yeah,
there's something about like the the temporary nature of everything where it's like it's something to look forward to. It's something to appreciate while it's there. If every day is perfect, it's almost like you get used to it, and then it feels not special anymore.
that's exactly what happened to me. That's exactly, and still visit friends who never moved from, that's the place that they live within 3 miles of where they were
Yeah,
born. I'm like, you really, you really still want to do
yeah,
this? You know? I'm starting to question some of maybe some of my tastes in choosing some of my
yeah.
friends.
And plus, there's like a lot to love about the stuff that sucks, like the snowy seasons and stuff. Like it's nice to be like warm indoors. And there's this
Absolutely.
I learned this term when I was in Copenhagen. They call it hygge, which is like the idea of like, oh, I get all bundled up and like I have my little coffee, and it's like, ooh, it feels good to like be warm when it's all cold out and like everybody's together, and so it's hygge. So it's like,
Hygge, I like it.
I really, you don't get that when it's fucking
Absolutely. And also
72 every day.
you get the excuse to not. I like staying in. If I don't have to go out, I'm perfectly happy. I like
Hmm.
the home that we have. I like, so if it's dark and dreary out there, then I've got the perfect excuse to stick around and not go exploring.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. As
uh,
as a nerd gamer artist, it's like it's always about being indoors. Although
yeah.
like as I'm getting older and like I've toured a lot more and I've been around the world and stuff, it's I have been finding a lot more joy in like exploring around and
Yeah.
looking around and being outside.
Yeah, the balance is great, and yeah, I guess that's the thing too. Is I travel a lot, and so when I am home, I really like to just hunker down as much as possible. So
Hmm.
yeah, so in terms of oh, by the way, I forgot to mention I just for you, I thought I would. This is the dreaming tree background here.
Yeah. I immediately recognized it and I was like I at first I thought it was real and then I was like, "Whoa, what?" And then I saw the microphone was in the shot and it had like a little outline as if it was
Right.
like, and I was like, "Oh, that's so clever."
Yeah, this guy, one of the fans early on, he sent me dozens and dozens of screen grabs that he then did these upscaling, really meticulous work of all of these scenes in the game. So
Oh
whenever
yeah.
we stream our game plays, I usually just have this in the background or one of these shots in the background because it just kind of it's so cool.
That is
Yeah.
crazy. I didn't realize how like high res it is because that
Yeah.
game is that's running at like 420 or something.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's very low res. So when did you first start geeking out on games? What was the first ones that got you going?
Uh, that's a good question. Um,
Was it old Atari stuff? Was it
I guess it was a Nintendo Entertainment System because my family had just gotten like a Dodge van, and they did a promotion with Nintendo where like if you bought a Dodge, then you got a Nintendo. Um, and so we just had one, and I think we had like Mario 1 and like some other shitty game, and we would just like occasionally obtain a new game because they're even back then they were like $60,
Yeah, yeah.
and back then that was like way more than it is now. Um, so it was we made do with what we had,
Yeah.
and we get obsessed with the three games that we grew up with. But yeah, it was like Mario,
Right.
and we didn't have like Tetris or God, what did we have? The one game that I remember that was a big event is this game Ragar, um, which is like a side scroller, and I think it was like an arcade game or something. Anyway, uh, my dad found it on the side of the road as he was driving to work. There was just a cartridge on the side of the road, and he brought it home, and he was like, "I hope this works," and it
Oh,
did, and it famously in our household like rattled. So like I don't know what was loose inside of it because I
but it
can't
wasn't
imagine like
keeping it from playing the game.
yeah, but it was fine. It like worked. So
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, so
That's
it was the NES for sure. And then the other big event in my life was when I finally was like working. I think I worked the first thing I did, I was doing like web design work for random people,
yeah.
and I went to a pawn shop and I got a Dreamcast. So that was like I think that was right when like I was like, you know what? I'm a gamer because I went out and I bought my own thing, and like I had a TV in my like a hand me down CRT in my room, and I was like, oh, I gotta hook it up myself, and look, I'm gaming right now with my own
Nice.
money and my own freedom. This is great. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Now, was your dad being in tech? Was he into games too, or was that sort of who did you start to like once you started to play those early games, you ultimately had a pusher. You had somebody in your life who was like, you got to check this one out. And so who was that person in your life that started feeding you the cool games?
yeah, it was my dad.
Was it?
But that was the end because he was huge on Dig Dug and in the arcades, and then when he got the NES, he played a lot of that. Because he was still, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but like he was younger than I was when I just went to visit them for Christmas, and we watched a bunch of like old Christmas videos
Yeah.
where that I hadn't seen, in like 20 years. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, this guy's younger than I am right now in this
Yeah.
video. And that's my dad.
Yeah. That's it's only going to get worse, man.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Uh, but he's got two kids and what? So, um, but yeah, so I remember when I was a kid, there was like some levels in Mario that I couldn't beat, and he would beat them for me. And
Oh, that's great.
but then
Did
that
you
was
just
the end for
did you just
him.
read that some kid and I forgot what in
Oh,
Texas or something?
the Tetris kill screen.
Yeah, he did
Yeah,
it. He beat the whole game. He's the
that's
only artificial intelligence was able to do that before him.
yeah, that's crazy. Well, do you know about rolling
No, huh?
that technique? So it's actually like kind of recent. I want to say it's like maybe 4 years old that people discovered this technique, but like the game gets
So
so
fast.
fast that you can't move the pieces all the way like with human speed. So there's this kid that developed this system where you hold the controller upside down, and then you have a finger
Oh my
propped
God.
against the D-pad, and then your other hand taps,
Oh my
like rolls your
God.
fingers so that you get 4 times as many hits
Oh,
than you
that's
can with just your thumb.
crazy. Man.
And so that's how they're doing. Like it's the Tetris scene is amazing. I think there's a couple like fan made mini documentaries on YouTube about the Tetris scene, but like
I watched the movie. It's not a great movie. It was very entertaining, but I'm not sure if you saw the one that came out recently with Egerton or somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
So funny story about that movie. I haven't seen it, but there's there's a part of the movie where he's talking to some execs or whatever, and he mentions Punch Out, and then it shows a clip of Punch Out, and they used a clip from Game Grumps.
No.
Yeah, like, and nobody asked us or anything. I think they just Googled
Oh
Punch
my
Out footage,
God.
and then just because it's our, on our playthroughs, we have like the little orange halftone,
Yeah.
and it was our orange halftone in the movie. I think they were just like, it's just Punch Out footage. Who cares? But like, it was very iconically Game Grumps footage.
Oh, and then
Uh,
did all your hordes come after, let you know about that right away, or
well, I've never, yeah. I mean, people were like, "What the heck?" And yeah, they sent videos of it and stuff. But like, I'm never, for some reason, I just never got the gene to be like angry about that kind of stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, that's neat.
yeah,
Wow,
exactly.
somebody there likes Game Grumps. That's cool. But yeah, I did
Well,
get a
yeah,
lot
I
of
mean, if they were
comments where,
using like if they were taking, come on, it's a screen grab, who cares, but if they
yeah,
were
yeah,
taking like something very specific to you guys, I could see that being a little different, but that's kind of fun. That's
yeah.
hilarious.
Those
So
are pretty. It's like somebody on the team was a Game Grumps fan. That's nice.
so you get into you get into when did you get into animation and your in artwork?
I think pretty much my whole life I had been like making stuff, and I don't know like what. There were two things that sort of sparked the animation thing. One of them was there was an episode of Muppet Babies, um, where Nanny had like a home video camera, and then they started making like stop motion animation with it because it had like a little like one frame button on it. And we had a home video VHS camera, and I was like, I wonder if I could do that. And
Hmm.
then so I did, but I did like start stop, like record
Yeah,
stop.
I remember doing the same thing. I remember it was just with some friends. We had a guy sitting on we were just hanging out, and one of us sat on the kitchen, the kitchen floor, and then we just had him move, and we were able to do one of those quick little stop motion where
Oh
he
yeah,
worked his way out but
where
just
you
with,
do it with people.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so fun. But I think that just awakened, and that was another video that I watched when I was visiting for Christmas. They still had some of my old stop motion, and
That's
it was
great.
pretty surprised. Like it's interesting to watch and see it because I was like figuring it out. Like
Hmm.
I was figuring out like what keyframes were and like how much information I could convey with like X amount of frames or whatever. Um, and I was like, I don't know, 6 when I did
Jeez,
that.
man. Yeah.
Um, but then the second big thing for me was there we got some cereal, and this is like right when Toy Story came out, and they used to have prizes in the cereal boxes, and one of the things for one of the cereals was like a little Toy Story flip book. And I feel like I had experienced flip books before, but for some reason that one really like spoke to me, where I was just like, this is amazing that it looks like it's moving, but it's just pictures.
Yeah.
And then uh, around the house we had one of those like post-it note
Hmm.
stacks, and I was like, this looks exactly. I could just make my own flip books with this, and so I started doing that. Um, and I don't know, there's just something about
Are they still around somewhere? Or did you
probably not.
or did
Wow,
you ever
that's
videotape did you ever videotape any of those
no.
post-its?
Wow, I never even considered they might still be around. Probably not though.
That
I
would
mean,
be fun.
it was just like stick figure stuff. I don't think it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
very
yeah.
impressive. But out of this something spoke to me about that whole process, and then I just was casually doing that however I could. And there were all these like once I was like an early adopter of like using a PC and going online and chat rooms and stuff. So I was finding a lot of kind of like open source programs that sort of allow, like, we would make animated GIFs or whatever. And there was this one called Easy Tune that just made black and white GIFs. Um, and so I was just like constantly making little animations in that. And then I discovered Macromedia Flash, which was the life changer for me because that's what allowed me to make like actual cartoons and stuff.
Oh man. And so, I mean, I'm just this little bit that I've read, and it sounds like you started posting. I mean, you must have been a teenager, right? When you first started posting your stuff online and started to get some attention. Where you seem like you were pretty young when that first started happening, right?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of like a weird. So the first cartoon that I like officially sort of put out there to like a big audience was Metal Gear Awesome, and I was
Yeah, it's the one I've read about. That was that kind of put you on the map a little bit, right?
yeah, and I
Yeah.
want to say I was like 18, 19 when I made that one. Um, yeah, that seems about right.
Hmm.
Uh, um, I mean, you can literally look at the upload date and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
work backwards, but uh, that was pretty huge for me. But before that, um, when Napster was really big, it's like a music sharing, peer-to-peer music sharing
Hmm.
platform. I was huge on Napster and I was like downloading all kinds of music and all kinds of like comedy and stuff. And so I was downloading like stand-up bits and then I started getting into like produced scene comedy that like I didn't understand were all clips from like Opie and Anthony and like radio shows and stuff. And I just thought there were people making comedy and then putting it on Napster. So I started making my own versions of that, and I was like 13. Um, so I was doing like these comedy scenes just fully in audio and like cutting it together in cool edit, and then just putting it on my Napster. And you used to like there weren't like algorithms back then. You would just search for a thing and then you would get back whatever you searched for. Um, so there were like kind of proto metadata tags where you would put that in the title of the MP3. So like you wouldn't just put like
Right.
whatever the name of the thing is, you'd put like parentheses funny, parentheses comedy, parentheses parody, parentheses,
Yeah.
um, so I was doing that to my stuff. And then suddenly I just got curious one day and I was like, is anybody downloading this stuff that I put out there? And I searched it and I was getting like I got like hundreds of results and I was like, oh my God, people have this. So I
Wow.
was doing so I had this little series called In a Nutshell where I was like just video games or shows that I liked, like Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon or Digimon or whatever. I was just making these kind of quick parodies of um because I was inspired by there was this old file on Napster that was like Star Wars in 30 seconds. And it was just this very like boom, 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 joke, 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 like summary of Star Wars. And I was like, why isn't television comedy like this? Like I feel like they spend so much time with like all this like story and build up and areas where there's not jokes. Like I just wanted jokes all the time. So that was huge for me, and I made my own version of that. So like Dragon Ball Z in a nutshell was like this super hyperactive, fast retelling of like summing up of Dragon Ball Z. Um, and I found a couple years later, there's a website called newgrounds.com where you could like upload Flash cartoons. So, and Dragon Ball Z in a nutshell was like number one on the Newgrounds portal for a while. And I was like, what the fuck? And somebody had taken the audio and then made a cartoon out of it. Uh, and
So it was
and
just audio. You had just created the audio at
I
the
just
time.
made the audio. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Uh,
And then someone took that and then animated it.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that's what was getting all the hits.
Yeah. I mean, people were hearing the MP3 on Napster and stuff, but like
Yeah.
that was really what made that
Is
bit
anybody making
take
money
off.
at this point, or it's just shared for everyone?
No,
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 no
yeah.
one's
This is
yeah.
all just for
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
for internet clout.
Yeah.
But like me being who I am, I was like, cool. somebody, wow, this is awesome, and so I reached out to, because Newgrounds has like direct messaging, and I reached out to the guy and was like, hey, that's my thing, you made a cartoon out of my thing. And he was like immediately like, oh dude, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'll take it down. And I was like, no, it's awesome, I love it, it's so cool. Thanks, I made a second one, do you want to make a cartoon out of that? And he was like, oh no, I'm pretty busy, and I'm like, okay, well, here's it anyway, I haven't like released it yet. And I sent it to him, and he was like, this is so funny, I'm making it right now. And I was like, okay.
Oh, that's,
So he and I are like lifelong friends, and
oh,
now
really?
I've yeah, he lives in California, and we used to hang out all the time.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
but yeah, that was like sort of the origin of being like, oh, maybe I could make some stuff and
I was going to say, at what
put it on
point did
this
you go? Yeah, at
platform.
what point did you go from, hey, you go make animation for my stuff to going, I can actually do all of this, or I can animate my own work. I
I
mean, of
don't
course, you've been doing it. You were doing it prior to that.
Yeah, I feel like I had a complex about like actually making cartoons. I just didn't feel like my art was good enough or anything. So my big thing was like voice acting. I was like, I want to be a voice actor. I want to get into the industry and do that. And so on Newgrounds, there were a lot of like prolific creators on there who were making pretty regular cartoons. And I basically made like a pseudo demo reel, and just before I even knew that was a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then was just like sending it to these guys and just being like, hey, I'm working on getting better at voice acting, I would love to like be in your cartoons. And a
So at
couple
this
people
point
were,
in your life, how old are you now? You're still teenager, early
yeah,
20s?
it was like 16 to 18 or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at this point, you're 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 goofing around online, getting your internet cloud, kind of, doing all this, having fun. You really want to be a voiceover actor. So if that's the thing that you're sort of gearing up towards wanting to do
Yeah.
professionally, does that seem about right?
Oh
And
yeah.
then, okay, so now you're trying to get the word out about, getting some work as a voice actor.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I didn't know anything about how to get into the actual industry or anything. It was just like I wanted to do it. I just loved doing it. So um I started to make a name for myself on Newgrounds as like a voice actor, and I would have
Hmm,
people like reach out to me, and
that's
they
awesome.
they would want me, and I started getting famous on the platform for doing a Solid Snake impression, which wasn't very good, but like it was close enough. Um so
No one else
I
is doing it, dude.
yeah, so there was like a couple people who um got me to do that voice, and I just like really loved it. And eventually people stopped asking me to do it because nobody was really making Metal Gear cartoons anymore, because it was kind of
Right.
getting into fashion. So I was like, man, I still want to do that. So I just like wrote my own.
Nice.
And the funny thing is, the I most of those jokes are from, I made a Metal Gear Solid in a nutshell MP3 that I was distributing on Napster forever, that had a lot of the jokes from Metal Gear Awesome in it. Um, but I just turned it into a script and then re-recorded it and like did all the voices. And I had a friend of mine do Meryl in that cartoon, and then I just kind of threw it together in a couple days and just to show it to my friends. And all my friends were like, dude, you should put it on Newgrounds, you should submit it to Newgrounds. And I was like, no, this is terrible, like it's not, like this isn't of the quality that is usually being put on this platform. It's really like thrown together
And was that
slapdash.
true in retrospect? Was it the quality, or were you just, kind of nervous?
Well, yeah, I think because a lot of people, I mean, I don't want to act like I fucking invented anything, but like, I don't think a lot of people were doing it the way that I was doing it,
Mhm.
where all I knew was traditional frame by frame animation. Just draw a picture and then draw the next picture and then just do that forever. Um, Flash had a lot of tools that would allow you to like move around shapes and symbols.
Yeah.
And then it would like interpolate frames in between that. Uh, and that's how most of the cartoons on Newgrounds looked. Uh, so there was a certain like vibe to Flash cartoons, and the way that I made it, it was just drawings, and so it felt very unpolished. Um,
But but there was a charm and an intentionality to that unpolishedness that probably um, drew people in. Is
yeah, I mean, it was right out the gate. It was huge. The creator of the website, his name's Tom Fulp, who's such a awesome guy and has like helped so many artists um, through his website and just by being like a really supportive dude. He like put it right on the front page, like number one, and like
wow,
he went on Attack of the Show on G4 and like specifically talked about it's like nobody's making cartoons like this on the platform, and like this guy just like it's just like his pacing with like jokes and stuff is so like it's like something we haven't seen before, and I was
that's
like, oh my
great.
god. um so
I
immediately I
must have
got,
something.
yeah, like I was like, dang, okay, I could do more. But right when I was thinking like, hey, I could do more, I got reached out to by this guy at MTV who was like, we have this gaming show that we would really love to have like a lot of your kind of bits in it, like sprinkled throughout it as like sort of interstitial bits. Um, and I was like, yeah, I would love to fucking work for MTV at like 19 years old or whatever.
Holy
That's
shit,
awesome.
man, that's insane.
It paid nothing,
Okay,
but it was an opportunity to just
yeah.
like do more of that, right? Um, so I did. I made a bunch of shorts for it, and nobody saw them on MTV because it was actually I felt a slightly duped because it was like an internet show that they were doing. Although they had like a little tester thing where they were like, oh, we're gonna see if we like the show and it would do well on the network. So they did like a special and they put a bunch of my shorts in the special. So they actually were on television, but only a couple of them
Well,
and only once.
this leads me to, I mean, just to pause a little bit, like, hearing your story, one of the things I think about a lot is, like for me, I wanted to be an actor, and that was, I decided that a little bit later. But when I decided to do that, that was my commitment. And like you, I guess I just thought that people out there that were good at what they did, they knew better than me. So I was going to put myself in their hands, and then hopefully I would get groomed, or I would get, I would be an apprentice and I would work my way up the ladder and
Yeah.
become. But what I found was that what I really was doing was giving other people my, I was giving them the power to use me or not. I was taking all my own power away by letting other people choose whether I could work or not.
Mm,
And when I look back on that early stages of my career, I want to just slap that kid and go, you I know now that creating your own work, doing things that you care about, even if it's just even in a really small way, is going to be a much better boon for your career than waiting for someone to hire you. And it seems like you were doing that just in innately from the get-go. You were just creating work and you were finding ways to get it out there. And it seems like even to now, to this day, it's paying off. Rather than waiting for other people to hire you as a voice actor, you were creating ways to get yourself out there. Is that a fair way of assessing that?
yeah. I mean, I don't know necessarily that like all of it was about getting out there, I don't I've never had like money neuroses or anything. I don't know why it's like I didn't grow up well off or anything. I just for some reason I was just kind of like, I don't know, it'll work out. I'll get a job or something. Um, so whenever it came to like creative work and stuff, it was just like I just wanted to do it, and I find it fun, and um I don't know if it's like a lack of trusting other people, because I trust people all the time on a daily basis, but like I just always feel like it's like I could just do it myself.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there were so many moments coming up, especially after, Metal Gear Awesome blew up and like people knew who I was, and I was like looking to do something bigger in the industry or have like a bigger presence or whatever. Like I was just getting a lot of like no energy from everybody.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of like, all right, then I'm still gonna do it. Like I'm not gonna wait around for people to give me a bunch of money or something. Like I'm just gonna
Do the
like
thing.
I I know it can be done. I guess like people call it like an autodidact or whatever, where you just kind of like teach yourself whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but that's just like how I'm like, yeah, can everybody do that? Like I don't know. Like it's just like I want to be able to do this thing, so I'm just gonna learn how to do it and then do it. Um,
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people work that way. I think, I think there's, you know, yeah, I think a lot of people want other people to give them the permission or or hire them or what have you to do that thing, and um,
I wish I could tell you where that like comes from, because I
yeah.
don't, I've been to therapy and I've done a lot of that stuff, but I'm like, I don't know how. Maybe just because I was kind of left alone to my own devices, and
Right, right,
I just get curious. I'm like,
right.
how did they make that?
So I'm going to
And
skip ahead a little bit. Tell me about the sort of the wild west of YouTube, because I think in those early days, it must have really been quite an open, interesting world that you got into. So did you consciously shift away from animation and creating those kinds of stories to being an on-air personality, or how did that come about?
um, well, I YouTube. I mean, I hate to say it, but like YouTube for me has always been like more of a money thing. Because Newgrounds was like the creative outlet, right? And I wasn't there was a point where my cartoons were being sponsored by Newgrounds, but that was just kind of like, oh, that's awesome, thank you, that really helps. But that wasn't like, I still had a job at that point and I was
Mhm.
doing odd jobs. And um but YouTube, in fact, I was pretty anti YouTube for a while because the compression algorithm was like really terrible. So there were a lot of people that were like taking my cartoons and then re-uploading them
Oh,
onto
wow.
YouTube, and they just looked and sounded terrible.
Ah,
Because at the time, that's just how YouTube was.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I was pretty publicly like anti YouTube. But once they fixed that, and then the idea of MCNs came into the mix, where it was like, we're running ads against your videos, and so you'll make X amount of dollars per view or whatever. Um, then it was like, oh, this is an interesting platform. Maybe I can officially put up all my cartoons on there. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I partnered with a company called Machinima, which isn't around anymore. And there was a lot of like crooked shit going on back then with that company, but uh, it was very simplistic back then. It was like, if you get 1,000 views on this video, you will make $2. Like just
Right, right.
very, that's
Boom.
just how it is.
Yeah.
You can write it down and calculate exactly how much money we're going to pay you. Um, and I don't know what fuckery they were doing on the back end, but that was the deal, right? Um, so I was just re-releasing all my cartoons. I was like remaking a lot of my old cartoons. I think at one point before the YouTube thing, I was like already remaking some, because I was thinking of like releasing a DVD of all the, because everybody was doing that at that time. It was like, if you were somebody who made a show online, like the Angry Video Game Nerd or whatever, you would made a DVD and you sold it, and that's how you made a lot of money. And you do
Oh,
like
wow. Yeah.
convention appearances and like signed DVDs and stuff. Um, so I was already kind of doing that with the plan of selling a DVD. Um, but then the YouTube thing came along and I just started uploading to YouTube. So that was, once I did that on YouTube, and I had my first like big hit on there, which was Awesome Reach, which was made, I think I uploaded it to Newgrounds as well, but it was kind of made for YouTube. Um, that was like the most money I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, okay, I think this is like my job now. Um,
So what year was
so
this? What year was this when this happened? Right around.
I can look up.
Gotta look you up.
Yeah, I can just look up when I
I think I
uploaded
might have
Awesome
something
Reach
up
on
here.
my phone. Let's see. Awesome Reach. 13 years ago.
13 years ago.
Yeah, so
And so that how how did that when you first started share with me how you upload that you're probably getting a bunch you have your own YouTube channel at this point, right? Is it your own
yeah.
channel? And then what are the views that you're getting for your other stuff at this point, which you're probably pretty happy with before this thing takes off?
Uh
Yeah, are you
are you
getting like X so many thousands of views? Is it more than that? Are you getting I mean, are you used
oh
to
yeah, like millions. It was crazy.
you were getting millions for your other stuff too?
For what do you mean other stuff?
Like when you first started uploading your cartoons and stuff, you said.
Yeah, I mean that was it. That was all I had was cartoons. So I mean it
But
was
how
yeah.
quickly did it take? How quickly did you start getting that many views?
Um pretty quickly.
Wow, man,
Uh
that's crazy. And then
well, because I already had kind of a reputation
right,
because of
okay, so people,
Newgrounds.
yeah, and now they
Um
you were kind of branching out, and they wanted to see what you were doing, and
yeah, and YouTube just kind of accelerated that because YouTube had more of a general audience. Um as opposed to Newgrounds, which was a little more niche.
yeah, and so
Um
that one just took off, and it was all of a sudden it started to give you a little bit of an income.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it was like I remember riding a like a $10 knockoff Razor scooter to like a local car dealership, and like I bought my first car like cash just because I had the money to do that finally. I was like,
Wow,
damn.
wow, that's
Um,
amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. That's so
uh,
cool.
yeah, but that was life changing. That was when it was like, okay, full time.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be making videos for the internet, and then it sort of went beyond just making cartoons. Then I created Sequelitis, um and I had this other show called Lemon and Bill. That was
yeah.
nobody's a fan of that.
Well, I'm reading all the stuff that you've put together. I mean, so to what degree early on this had to be all just you, right? So you seem to be someone, and this is what I'm super curious about. When you have so many different projects that you're working on, how do you? Because I'm bouncing around between two or three things that take up the bulk of my day. But just the being able to switch from the one thing that you're working on to the next project and all that, it's a are you able to easily switch to the next thing? How are you able to kind of keep all the plates spinning at the same time? Have you always had a natural sense of being able to uh, multitask, I guess is the best way of saying it?
Well, it's a mental illness called ADHD. Um,
Or it could be a superpower, I guess, too, right?
well, I mean, it comes with its own drawbacks. Um, so like everything that I've ever done in life that's been successful has been like a side project. Like that's kind of a symptom of ADHD is that like the thing that
Everything.
you're supposed to be focusing on is just like agony to work on mentally, but like something else is like, ooh, what's this shiny object over here? I'm gonna try some of that.
It's what you
Uh,
need to do is just shift it. You need to change your brain so that the thing you really need to be working on, you have to make that seem like the thing that is off to the side. You have to somehow, uh, you know,
so this is a method. You're describing a method called Lichtenbergianism, that was developed by a guy named Lichtenberg,
and
and
Stetler. It sounds like
he didn't so he apparently I guess the story is that he didn't realize that he had ADHD, so he developed this system that was like this is just a good productive system, and then like looking back on it now it's like, oh, this dude totally had ADHD and he was just like coping with how his brain works.
well,
But
what?
it
Go ahead.
it
Sorry. Go
does
ahead.
work. Like you kind of you trick yourself into thinking like this thing that I'm supposed to be doing isn't the most important thing that I should be doing. But then
Yeah,
you're like, oh, but it's like a side project.
oh, that's
It's
hilarious.
interesting
That's
stuff. Yeah.
so. When did you? When did you? first realize you had ADHD, and was that something you had struggled with, and just finally, was it a big relief to finally know that there was a name to it, or what? Yeah, what was that experience like?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't. I feel like maybe I had a somebody told me that that might be the case when I was younger or something, but like it's like we didn't have money for like medication or whatever. Like I just dealt with it. And I think it was just it was that weird. You ever hear that story? I wish I knew what band it was, but there's this famous story in like the musician world where there was this kid and he heard this song. It's just like a Beatles song or like a I wish I could remember. Anyway, it's a song that was like a very hard guitar part. And like as a kid, just being a kid and just having a record and liking to play guitar, he like really wanted to play that part. And so he like got really, really good at guitar and was able to play that part. And then eventually one day he was like became a professional guitarist and he ended up running into the guy who played guitar on that part. And he was like, yo, what got me really good at guitar was like learning to play this part, and Larry, here, let me play it for you. And so he played it, and then the guy's like jaw was on the floor, and he was like, what's the deal? And he was like, that was two guitars on that solo, and you just played it on one guitar.
Oh my God.
So it's like I feel like it's kind of a sort of similar situation for me. It was like I wasn't really aware of that, like I was struggling. I just kind of was like, this is just how it is. So
Yeah.
I'll just figure out a way around it.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Wow.
and then, come to find out as an adult, like, oh no, your brain sucks at that. You just happen to overcome it because you really wanted to make a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so, and that's something that like, I sort of had to come to terms with now because I get a lot of I interact with fans and people who are interested in my story quite a bit, and I get a lot of questions about like how do you have ADHD? How do you stay focused? How do you do all this stuff? And for a while I was reading up on a lot of it too, and I would learn about like the Pomodoro technique and like Lichtenbergianism and I would like recommend that to people. But nowadays I'm just like, you just have to acknowledge that it's going to be hard. It's like it's not there's no trick. Like it's
It's
your brain doesn't work like other people's brains, and you just have to push through if you really
Yeah,
want
but
to
your
do it,
brain has worked the way it has always worked. It's sort of like, you don't know any different. So you
Yeah.
might say it doesn't work like other people's brains, but you don't know how other people's brains work. You only know how yours does. So
Yeah.
finding it sounds like what you're saying really is you, you got, there might be some uh some things out there that can help you, but at the end of the day, you have to figure out what works best for you, right?
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
there has to be a level of acceptance. And that's something that like, I think it's really great that like on TikTok, for example, like a lot of people are talking about like mental health and, in terms of like autism or Asperger's or like any neurodivergence, there's a lot of knowledge out there about it now and people talking about it and like sharing their stories and I think that's really great. But what I do see that like makes me kind of worried is this sort of like coddling's not the right word. It feels like uh dismissive.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, my brain's a certain way, so like go easy on me. And it's like that's nice, but I kind of feel like it's creating this sense of like people are kind of losing their grit a little bit, where it's like, it's not like it's impossible. I there are moments in my life where like I'm struggling really hard to focus or to stay on track or to get things done. And even, as somebody who that I mean, especially as somebody who runs like a couple companies, right? So but like if somebody had told me that kind of stuff when I was younger and was like, it's hard for you, and like, you know, uh sometimes your brain just can't do it. I
Or
maybe I
if
wouldn't
you,
have.
yeah, or if that was in your own, if that was your own way of dealing with it, you're just giving yourself excuses. So, gosh, yeah, I guess I can't run more than one company because that's just going to be too much. Because I need to be good to myself. I need to give myself a break because I have
Yeah,
this thing. I can see where you're giving yourself an out. And I get it
yeah,
because people are dealing with very, extreme conditions, but it's complicated. It's super
yeah.
complicated. But I hear what you're
And
saying.
I'm like, I totally get that aspect of it too, because there's parts of me where I'm like, should I be this busy? Like, should I be doing this much stuff? Like, it's kind of stressful, and I feel like I'm gonna die earlier because of it. But like, it's also something that I want to do, and I'm very happy with doing a lot of this stuff. So yeah, you're right. It is a very complicated issue, and I don't know. I'm certainly not saying like it's bad to be like, hey man, I've got this mental thing and I just can't do that. Sorry. Like
Right, right,
that's
right.
probably the better thing, honestly, for like everybody's mental health. But like as a creative, as like, kids coming up to me and being like, I want to be in the position that you're in, it's like, well, it's tough. Like you really you have to fight through it sometimes. But
Totally.
like you can get there.
Yeah, and you do a lot of. I imagine you do a lot of. As you said, you're probably interacting with and fielding questions by here we are right now talking, but you're probably often talking to people who are really wanting advice and wanting to, you found a way to be successful at a certain thing that is unique and not everybody can do that. And so I think people want to know what that secret sauce is, right? And they're trying to get it from you. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a bit of a um I wouldn't say I don't know if it's a burden, but that's a lot to put on you. Like how do you interact with people who are trying to do what you do?
Yeah. That the biggest piece of advice I ever give to kids like that is like you just do it, and again, maybe that's my own brain worms, but like I just it just seems so obvious,
Yeah.
like if you want to do a thing, then just go and do it and like be annoying about it and get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
If you want to end up being a good cook, or then you just start cooking. If you want to be a good actor, then just start acting, like film your own things.
Yeah.
And at that point you kind of become multi-talented in a way where it's like, okay, well, now I have to learn how to use a camera, and it's like, okay, so learn to use a camera, and
Well,
then
that's the thing. I mean, one of the things that saved me during the pandemic was doing this thing. I didn't, I run a small performing arts company that, was doing pretty well, travel a lot. And then pandemic, everything kind of went away. And I was, I was, very, very antsy. And then I realized that, you know, um, it was the 25th anniversary of the making of Phantasm 2 coming up, and I'd never talked about it. I'd never even played it, so I just, and
wow.
there were enough fans out there who had been reaching out to me, and there were enough playthroughs, online playthroughs that had, the Spoony one had a huge following, and I got all these people coming. I mean, I didn't know what to do with it back then. Um, so I thought, well, it's the 25th anniversary. I'll make a little appearance and do a YouTube thing, and I'll maybe talk to some of the other cast and crew. And I ended up making this kind of oral history project. But I had never been on YouTube. I didn't have a channel, or I think I did one for my Letters Aloud thing, but we were just posting stuff. But for the first, all of a sudden, I'm learning OBS, and it was like I was
Yeah.
walking into. I had no clue what it was. And I know it's a
Yeah.
pretty user friendly system, but if you've never been a user of any system like that, but it was so overwhelming, but it was kind of fun. You just kind of learn it. And now I know it. And now I'm not the best, but I can make it work. And so it is neat to pick up an instrument of some sort from scratch and just go, what can I do with this? How
Yeah.
does this work? Yeah, other people are doing it. And so it was really helpful for me to have those kinds of things to learn and play around with, while we were all hunkering down.
Yeah, seriously. It's like making bread and shit. Like I
Sourdough
love
and
I believe that people were put here to learn, right? Like I love learning personally, like anything. And I love the feeling of getting better at something. Um, but maybe there's some people that don't take as much joy in that, but like I feel like there's something in all of us that's like
oh, it's the best.
a
It's
sense
it's
of
the best.
progress,
Yeah, those moments, and the best moments of all are when you're stuck, and then you go for a walk or you go do something, and you have that aha moment, that like, oh, I know what to do now. Those are the greatest when
Yeah.
you can get down to that. Um,
Hey, I got a question for you. You said you haven't played Phantasmagoria 2 until like 25 years after or so. When you played it, did it like jostle a bunch of stuff loose?
a little, yeah, a little bit. It was. I mean, I'd seen a lot of the footage. I'd used some of the footage for a reel or what have you, so I
Yeah.
kind of knew what it looked like. But having never played it before, it's a cheesy B movie game, and even when we were making it, we were making fun of. I keep disappearing. There's something going on with I think it's my green shirt. Um, this is very, very Phantasmagoria 2-ish. But yeah, it wasn't that much, but it was. It's weird watching your younger self, you know, in every frame of this thing. It's not necessarily the work of all the work that I've done, which is almost always on stage and which is ethereal and just disappears after it's done. The thing that has been captured is something that I did, and I'm grateful that it's been uh, that it really has had a positive impact on a lot of people for reasons that I never expected.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm very, very humble and happy to be a part of that. I don't think this captured my best work as an actor, and so, and I had to deal with that, but now I don't worry about it anymore. And so, like, being able to play with you guys the other couple weeks ago, I've kind of gotten over for the most part, the cringy stuff where you go, oh God, whatever you do when you see yourself in a light that you don't want to see yourself in.
Yeah. There's
Um,
definitely like an arc of time that you have to get past where it's like
yeah, for sure.
you're a totally different person, so you don't even like identify
Right.
with that anymore. Where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I was just there and I could have done this differently. It was like no, no, no. That's of course. I
Yeah,
was
it's what you did at the time, and that's
yeah.
it's fine. Yeah.
Did it make you like remember things from that time, like playing it back for the first time?
Well, all that it was more this channel has made me. Daniel, my partner, is a guy who he's reached out to me. He's a game developer out of Israel, and those LucasArts and Sierra Games, and especially Phantasmagoria 2, they were the big influence on him when he was a kid. Phantas 2 is his favorite game. He's played it a million times. He speed runs it and all that. So he's kind of come on as
Oh,
my partner, and he does all the technical stuff because I'm technically, and I've never played games. I never played any games ever except for like Madden and Mario
yeah.
Kart. So part of our channel is me playing any game ever for the very first time, and people kind of getting a kick out of how bad I am because I just don't have I didn't grow up with the skills. I think that's the one thing that people like to watch me struggle. Um, so, but no, it's been, I had to go through all the old journals, and yeah, when I first started putting together that oral history project and reached out to all the actors and the director and the writer, and we got them all on Zoom and we talked. That was the part that was like, wow, that really unlocked a whole bunch of stuff.
Wow.
Not so much the game itself. The game has its own weird energy to it, but talking about it and remembering the Adams family pinball machine in the green room, and now someone just
Best
sent
pinball machine there is.
it is, and someone just sent me the online simulator of it, and I'm obsessed. I'm playing it all the time right now.
Wow.
It's really well done. It's really good. And then I was at a bar with a friend the other day. We played darts. We've been playing darts for years, and all these years there's another room that I've never gone into because it doesn't have a dartboard. And I walked out the other night and I looked and there's a pin. I knew there were pinball machines and there's an Adams Family pinball machine in there. Went
Oh
in and
yeah.
played it for the first time. So that was fun. So yeah, those things kind of pop up and it's kind of cool.
That's awesome. And that's such important work too, I feel like, because stuff like I'm sure when they were making the game, there's not a sense of like we're making this legendary project. It's like this is just a game that we're making, and this is a crew that we put together to make this game. And so like I feel like so much of the things that make that process so unique and fun and that like point in time so interesting are the things that kind of just don't get logged or don't, and then there's a certain point where it's been enough time where like there start to be people that aren't around anymore that worked on that project.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
could such be lost history that
Yeah.
it's good that you're
It's funny.
chronicling all of
And
it.
Daniel, I kind of, yeah, he started to, he's interviewing all of these legends from those classic point and click adventure games because that's his jam. He loves it. And I got to say, point and clicker adventure games, I like them to a point. It gets a little, I want to hear more about some of your, the games that you connect with the most. But anyways, he's been interviewing all of these developers who created all these classic games, and he wanted me to do it, but I'm like, I don't know, I don't have enough. You do it. This is what you do. So, anyways, he's been logging these wonderful interviews lately, and it's been really fun to see.
That's awesome.
But anyway, Game Grumps. So we don't need to go from the leap from your your cart, your channel that was focused on your cartoons to that. But when did you start realizing that a you know playing video games live recording them was going to be the thing, or was that just one of the many things and it ended up being the thing that took off the most?
Well, at the time, like right before Game Grumps, I think the Let's Play format was a bit of it felt like a bit cheap to me. Um, Especially because the people who were doing it at the time, they were kind of the pioneers at it, in that format, and it just was very cheesy and very like in your face. And I was like, this kind of content isn't for me, and I'd sort of occasionally make fun of it. So I think Game Grumps as a concept was like a bit of a farce. It was like a kind of like a joke, like, we could do it too.
Yeah.
The irony being that like with the history of comedy that we have and that we've been doing other stuff for so long, like it ended up being a huge success right out the gate. Um, which was great for me. So that's sort of how that came to be. And then, the more you do anything, the more you like gain respect for it. And now I'm like, a lot of my friends do the same thing. And I certainly don't have any like animosity, or I'm not like, oh, this is a cheap piece of
Version of
entertainment. Yeah. I mean, there's a level of humility that you can have about it where it's like, yeah, I'm not fucking making Tenet over here. Like I'm just talking in front of video games, but like, I make a lot of people happy by doing that. So,
yeah.
um, I can't knock it.
uh and so when I you've probably told the story a million times and I don't need to get into the weeds of it, but you started it with John and that lasted less than about a little over a year, I guess, right? And
Yeah.
then, so did you know early on that that was probably not a long-standing? Was that heading? Did you feel like that was? I guess I don't know if I have a right question here. I can't even imagine you were thinking this was going to be a 10, 12, 13 year adventure in any case. So,
Yeah.
so when that when he decided to step down, was that a surprise or were you kind of ready for that?
Um, I don't know if it was a surprise. I mean, he had expressed a lot of interest in just like focusing on his solo stuff because I think that's really what made him feel creatively fulfilled.
Yeah.
I don't know that he was particularly like fulfilled by doing Game Grumps. but there definitely was a sense of like, I don't know how long we can be doing this. And there were a lot of like weird road bumps along the way too, of like, I remember Nintendo was being very strict about um like their copyright and like what that means, and like does footage from their game count as part of their copyright. And
Hmm.
they were cracking down on a lot of YouTubers and stuff. So there was kind of there were a couple little moments along the way where it was like, oh, this might be over if this is becomes a thing. But luckily it's this protected thing, I guess. um but anyway, yeah, there was never like a sense of like, we should do this for 10 years. that's
Right, right, right,
that's
right.
crazy to think that.
Yeah, exactly.
And to look back and just be like, wow, that really fucking melted away, huh? 10
Yeah,
years,
yeah,
the long time.
a long
And for
time.
people to still be, and the fact that like the platform has, I'm extremely grateful that we're still able to do this, because we haven't changed anything. Aside from like episodes are 30 minutes now when they used to be 10 minutes. Well,
Oh,
they're
really?
25
That's
minutes.
what they were. They were just 10 minutes.
Yeah, but we uploaded twice a day.
Oh, okay.
So it was
Okay.
still like 20 minutes of show for the
Huh.
day. Um, but now it's once a day, and I think we skip Mondays right now, and
Yeah.
the episodes are 25 minutes. So like, you watch the first episodes of Game Grumps versus now, and aside from that there was a different host, it's like it's the same show. There's nothing different about how we do it.
That was one of my questions. I was going to see how much has changed in terms of like format and how much you did that.
Yeah, in terms of format, nothing has
Huh.
changed. And it's like, again, I'm so grateful that like we're able to do that, because so much has changed throughout how YouTube functions and how people watch YouTube, and how YouTube has presented a way for people to watch. So when we started out, um I was still doing cartoons, and cartoons were huge because they had like super viral potential. They weren't easy to make, but like you only had to make like a 30-second cartoon, and all that mattered were the views.
Hmm.
um so as long as you had something that people were into sharing, uh you could make a ton of money on YouTube. But like right after we had started Game Grumps, there was a huge algorithm shift where it wasn't about views anymore. It was about how long people were watching and how long people were staying on the platform.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there have been a lot of like micro changes over time to that, but that's basically how it's been since. So it was sort of serendipitous that we came into a format that's like long form and relatively easy to create.
Right.
Um, so but nowadays there's another shift where it's like people aren't really, it's more about shorter content again. It's more about like um more produced content, and even the gaming stuff is like highly edited now. Like the most popular gaming stuff is like very, very edited, and we don't do any of that. It's all straight ahead,
Yeah.
like a podcast or something. We don't even cut out for dead air or
Huh.
or whatever. Like it's all just as is. uh and that's such an antiquated format, and yet our fan base is so cool that they just like stuck around.
No, that's great. And there's a it's like watching a movie that's overly edited versus a nice long shot. Sometimes you want to spend time with these people in
Yeah.
that space and not in some sort of, some space that's been manufactured to make it seem like that. So,
Yeah.
hey, before we move on, I don't know what your schedule's like. I feel like I've got so much. I mean, we just got to the point that I want to chat with you about stuff. We talked about going till about now.
Oh,
Um,
I'm good.
are you
I'm
good
good
for a
for it.
bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. I was curious about what was the decision behind now that we're recording. I changed my shirt because I was disappearing and I might as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So,
It
all
looks
right.
great.
Thanks. I look like I'm in the room. I look, I'm in this fake room. Here I am talking about, it would be great. It's really good to be creating a real environment for your friends, your fans. And here I am. Look at my environment compared to yours. Yours is real, mine is fake.
Oh
Um,
no, this is like a mattress right here. This is it's like totally thrown together.
when did you what went into deciding that you weren't going to be on camera, and what went into deciding about? It seems to me that you are always in the same room together, as opposed to going, doing it in from your own studios or home recording spaces. What was the uh, how did that decision get made? And it seems like you're staying true to that all the way through.
Well, being on camera was I I mean it was laziness. Like it was that was definitely a thing that a lot of the top guys were doing was like the face cam.
Mm-hmm.
And I had tried that. Uh I did like a test where I set up a camera and um I was always like I want to make it as good as I possibly can. So I had like a DSLR, and those are just like not good at doing long form stuff. They're good for like single camera shoots and stuff like that. Um so uh it just wasn't it was a pain in the ass. And I was like, well, if it's just audio, then it's easy. And the mic quality at the time was pretty good. So there's like a sense of quality that the show has that like if there was a camera that like kind of sucked, would like bring down the quality a little bit. So that was kind of the decision behind it. And then we sort of immediately started doing these cartoon renditions of like stuff that we would say on the show, um which I think was huge in the beginning to help the channel like grow and to foster community because I was a cartoonist, and so
It
like a lot of the
was it all your
people.
work, or were you able to do that as well, or were you just too busy and had to farm some of that out?
Yeah, so like the first two, I think two, maybe three, I think two. The first two cartoons that we put on the channel I had made. And then it was I mean it was truly a side project. It was like John would show up to my place. We would record like 7 episodes or something like that in the morning, and then for the rest of the day he would edit the episodes, and then I would work on one of the cartoons that would go up on the channel. And that's how we did it for like a couple months. And then we hired an editor when it started becoming like a real serious thing. But like yeah, it was like one day a week we'd get together and do this
Yeah.
thing.
Wow.
um but now it's like this whole operation, right? So the other question was
Being in the same room.
in the same room. Yeah. So I don't know. I just traditional media has just always been my standard of how things are done. I've never whenever I look at like internet shows, it always feels like less than, and
Hmm.
I just don't like that vibe. So when it comes to like, you know, the presentation stuff and so, it's always like the bar is traditional media. So I'm going to aim for that bar. And at the time, I think COVID changed a lot of things, but um, doing stuff remotely was like that
Yeah.
was like
No.
a faux pas, you know.
Yeah. Right. 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 Right.
So to have people in the same, and plus like the energy is different and stuff. Like it's not like I think shows that are remote are bad shows, but like if I have a choice, I'm always going to be in the same room with the other person. Um, just because it's just like you could
I'll
feel
tell
the
you,
energy of the room and
yeah,
everything, you know.
just I we do our streams, and we're my partner's in Israel and Tori in LA, and I'm here, and so we're all on Zoom, and it's fun, and you and I are communicating well here, but being in that room with you and Dan and Tori, just sitting on your couches, and it is such a difference. It's such a difference. There's no lag between there's just no lag because we're all in the same room. And
Yeah.
so I can see that. But I think that's a really cool decision that you made that I imagine there must have been times where it's like, well, can't we just do this from the comfort of our own
Well, so
bedroom
we
sometimes?
did that during COVID. We were when it was getting really bad. We were like, should we be getting together? Like
Yeah.
maybe we should be doing this remotely. So I think for like a good 4 or 5 months we were doing the show remotely. Um, and you know, it was I would do it at home and he would do it at home, and after a while we were like, okay, we'll both come into the office, but we'll be in different rooms. So at the very least, there's like an
Yeah.
energy to like that we're in the same, which really did change the energy of it. Like it's like knowing that he was just right over there, it like made
Yeah.
things feel different. So the funny thing is that especially with gaming now, um, and especially that most game developers know that like people are going to stream their game or whatever. Um, Everybody who streams, like they're never in the same room, and so with like the advent of like Discord and online gaming and stuff, like it's actually in some ways harder to be in the same room now,
Yeah.
because there are some games where it's like you can't play this on a
Yeah.
couch. Like
They're meant.
you have to be at another computer to play it with each
Right.
other.
Right. Right.
So there are some games where like we just haven't even played them because like there's this one game that came out recently called Lethal Company that people have been asking us to play, and I've played it a bunch just on my own, but it's like a fully online game, and it's so fun and it would be great for the show, but it's like you need to be in different rooms because the whole point of the game is that like if you die in the game then like you can't communicate anymore.
Right.
And that's like part of why it's fun. So we just never,
Yeah. It
because we
just
have to
doesn't.
set up a whole other thing to do that.
Yeah. 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 Um, so Dan, when he came on board, I mean, how did you know? Did you know him prior? Did you guys have a relationship prior to? I imagine you must have. You wouldn't pick a partner that you didn't know. But
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So
How did you guys meet?
so Dan, as you know, is has a band called Ninja Sex Party, and my friend Ross, who was also on Game Grumps for a while, and I've known him since we were making cartoons together. Um, he was big on them, like found them when they were at like 2,000 subs or
Oh,
something,
okay.
and he showed them to me, and I was like obsessed, and I thought they were awesome. And back in the day, you used to be able to send messages on YouTube. Um, And so I sent Ninja Sex Party a DM and was like, "Hey, you know, if you guys are ever in LA, I would love to meet you guys." Um, and I think they were kind of impressed by the size of my because I had like a 100,000 subs at the time on my cartoon channel. And they responded and they were like, "Yeah." And Dan was like, "I'm actually coming to LA because I have family there." And so we hung out and just kind of hit it off and
That's great.
became friends. And so like anytime he came to LA, we'd hang out. And I had an idea to do like a video game parody song, and I was like, who better to
Yeah.
collaborate with than them? So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, we should do this song together, and they were into it. And so we wrote this song and we went into a studio and recorded it, and that whole experience was completely new to me. So that was fun. But afterwards they were like, that was so much fun. We should do another song. And so we did. We wrote another song and then we went and recorded it. And then we were like, we're still into doing. We should just make a whole album of this. And
So
so we
that's
did.
is
And
that
then we
Star Bomb? Is that the
yeah. So
or
that's
yeah.
Starbomb. So we wrote and recorded that and basically did everything to get it together before Game Grumps even started. Before I even started it with John, you know, it was just kind of in the back burner for a while. And there was one night where Dan was over at my place and we were coming up with song titles for the album, and we were just like literally on the floor laughing, just coming up with these stupid ideas. And I was like, man, if I ever needed no, I think that when we were naming the album, I had already started Game Grumps. So I had the thought where when that was happening, I was like, man, if something ever happens to John, like he gets sick or something, like I this would be the guy I would ask to be my
Oh
co-host on the show.
wow. Wow.
And then, you know, eventually John wanted to pursue other things, and I was like, well, now's the
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. Well, you made the right. I mean, gosh, you've been together. I mean, this is a long partnership. How do you you got to drive each other crazy sometimes. How do you get through all that stuff?
We're just good communicators, I
Yeah.
think. Like, you know, there's of course moments where it's like this thing that you do drives me crazy. But like you immediately talk about it, and then
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
there's so much love and respect that it's just like, neither of us is going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about, Matt? We're gonna be like, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't, of course I'll stop doing
Has
that, or
has
I'll.
your relationship to each other taught you how to treat your respective spouses? Have you figured out how to be good good partners to your spouses as a result?
I mean, it feels like that sometimes, right? Like there's some weeks where we have to, we're on the road together, or like where we have to record a bunch, where it's like I almost spend more time with
Totally.
him than with my wife. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I do feel like when you're in when you're in a commitment like that with somebody, it is basically the same. The only difference is like, um the sex is better with Dan. No, I'm just kidding. um the
I
the
was going
only
to say insurance, but in fact, you are both providing insurance for, so, I mean, if you have a company now that actually probably provides
yeah, yeah,
insurance for
yeah.
both of you. Yeah.
That would be a one big difference. Yeah. um there's just no, it's different when you're in a relationship. I feel like there's so much like childhood shit that comes in with like an actual
Yeah.
like love monogamous relationship versus just like this guy that I work with.
Yeah, for sure. For
Um,
sure.
so in a lot of ways, it's like easier to just like talk to Dan, because it's like there's so much at stake that like why would you hold anything in, or
Yeah.
it's like of course I'm gonna, the moment I have an issue I'm gonna be like, hey man, I want to talk to you about something.
Well, and
Um,
also, he came into, and you and I briefly talked, and when we were when you were plying me with merchandise, but I was asking you about, this is your company, this is your, and he came in, and he's your online partner, and whenever you travel and all that, but in essence, if I'm not mistaken, decisions about the company and everything else, that's all on you, right? I mean, you're the one who runs this, and I imagine you know me running a super small performing arts company that goes out and does some touring and traveling and all that. I've had to learn, I mean, learning to run a business when you're a creative, that's a whole different side of your brain.
yeah.
And you're working at I mean, I'm working at a little level that blows my brain up quite a bit, but I imagine the learning curve for you to actually run a business, to be able to learn all the ins and outs of that must have been and must continue to be a challenge.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And the biggest thing that I've learned is just like business is people. Um, when it comes to like numbers and all that stuff, like I have a partner named Brent, and he's great. And he and I really like get each other. But in terms of like leadership and stuff, like it's all people.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've read a lot of books on it, and just done a lot of, just been through a lot of like bad times and good times in this journey. Like I
yeah.
certainly am not perfect throughout this whole thing, and even now. Um, but that's been the biggest thing to me, is just like appealing to the humanity of everybody. Because at the end of the day, it's like everybody who works for you is a person who has a life, who goes home and does a thing,
Yeah,
and it's like they're not living for this job. They can be passionate about this job, but
sure,
like
sure.
this isn't who they are.
Yeah,
So
it's
to
not.
sort of acknowledge that and work through that, and because a lot of people bring their unique personalities into the situation. I think from what I've seen, a lot of people who like lead sort of expect everybody to just get the job done, which like of course everybody wants, but to go to person A and person B and just be like, just get the job done. It's like person A and person B are gonna like hear that way differently. So it's like learning to talk to person A and talk to person B the way that they need to be talked to. I think
Absolutely. I
that's
remember.
like
Yeah.
so much of the job.
I played sports when I was in high school, and I was pretty good pretty good football player as a high schooler, and then I had a coach who his thing was he saw something in me that he knew that if he put trust in me and said, "Look, I remember one day he said, you know, I was having a really good season and I was wide receiver, and he said, if I'm going to throw the ball to you nine, if you drop the ball 9 times in a row, I'm going to throw it to you a tenth." And that, I've never felt more pressure or more of a sense of wanting to do well because of that trust that was given to me.
Mm,
And then I get to college and I play a couple of years of college ball, and it was, you drop a ball, you're out. You drop,
mm,
if you drop a ball, I got three guys behind you who can catch that ball. And that sense of you can't make a mistake, or you can't, you know, you can't work your way into something. I couldn't function under that way. And so to be able to be around people who know how other people need to be communicated with is huge. And I'm sure that's been a learning curve for you to know, oh, I can't talk to person A the way I talk to person B. That's
yeah.
not going to work, and it hasn't worked. And so I need to figure out a new way to work my way in.
Yeah, for sure. And another factor of that is like friends. When I first started it, I'll say when we
Yeah.
first started it, um, it pretty much everybody who was on payroll was like somebody I knew before they were an employee. And that is a very strange dynamic to navigate, and I don't know that it's worth it.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point now, it's like I consider everybody that I work with like my friend, but they weren't my friend first.
Right. You hired him
I
first.
hired them for a
I
job.
got to know him. Yeah.
Um, and that makes things a lot smoother, I think. Because it's like, if they want to get a beer after work or whatever, like I'll, of course. But it's like if something's floundering or whatever, I can't be like, oh man, are they still going to be my friend afterward?
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's you do the job or you don't.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of your personality, when you and John, because again, you and John were a year and you've been with Dan for 10, but you established kind of, my guess is you established kind of a dynamic originally where you were a certain personality versus his. And then Dan comes on. Are you still maintaining the personality that, the grumpy, guy who gets frustrated, and then you had to deal with a new personality and Dan being sort of a little more um, easygoing and fun and all that? Or I guess what I'm getting at is has one of the things you said to me, I hope I'm not giving anything away, but it seemed you said the other day that you sometimes have to maintain your dynamic. You're sometimes putting on a bit of
Yeah, of
a
course.
personality, right? And
Yeah.
where he gets to just kind of react and be himself the whole time. Is that fair to say?
I mean, we both, it's a show, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to put yourself 100% into it. Like that's like
Yeah.
it's like you're not going to. There's a point where you're like, I'm boring. Like there's parts of me that are really boring that wouldn't be good for a show. So I'm not going to
Exactly.
like go into that
I think
stuff.
that's where I'm going wrong with my channel. I just don't, I'm as boring as can be.
But like early on, yeah. Well, okay, two things. So the first one is the funny thing about the hey, I'm grump, I'm not so grump thing was it turned out that John was a lot grumpier than I was on the show. Uh, so it was like, oh, why is he not so grump? He's the one who gets worked up about stuff more.
Oh, that's funny.
Um, but then when Dan joined, he's like extremely not so grump, and then I
So
ended up
that worked out.
falling into
Okay.
the yeah. So it was like this weird, like almost like we knew. Um, but yeah. When it comes to doing the show, it's like, of course, I'm me, and I'm always gonna put myself into especially improvisational work. Um, I just see the world a certain way, so I'm going to put that into my work. So yeah, I've always considered Game Grumps like it's a show.
Yeah.
I'm doing a show. This is meant to be entertaining. Um, and one of the things that I think I had to come to terms with for a long time was, uh, to give you an example, I had a show called Sequelitis on my personal channel that was like very about game design. That was like a huge, still is a huge interest of mine. Um, and so I was analyzing it and making like very smartly made videos about it. And to this day, some of those videos are still used in people's game design classes.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah, which is like crazy, right? But for 10 years, I've gotten a reputation because like when you're doing an improvisational show and you're trying to be funny at the same time as you're playing a game, like I have a reputation that I'm shitty at games and that like I'm complaining about things and I like skip the tutorial and stuff. There's all these like memes about me on Game Grumps, right? So that it's this weird dissonance between like who I am on the show versus like
Yeah.
this highly researched, analyzed show that I did before. So it was like this flip of like, oh, he used to be the smart game design guy and now he's this fucking moron. Um,
And it's
and
funny,
so
you cultivated that personality, but also to a certain point, because I feel like I get that way sometimes when we do our streams where, you know, I am I mine is I don't play games. I've never played them. So I'm figuring it all out. So as a result, I flounder quite a bit, and I'm happy with that. I'm
yeah,
perfectly happy with people making fun of that. But there's a certain point where you go, okay, wait a minute. You've all played these games your whole freaking lives. You know them like the back of your hand, and you're getting
yeah,
mad at me for not doing this. You know, there's a certain
uh-huh,
point where you, even though you've cultivated the personality, sometimes you want to break out of it and say, I'm not exactly, this is a bit of a show,
yeah. Yeah, and not to put any of that on the audience because like they'll react how they'll react, but like
Exactly. It is. Yeah.
there is a bit of like you don't know how difficult it is to like be in this position where it's like I'm doing a show, but I'm also playing a game, and I've never played this game before, and I have to read stuff, but I also have to be entertaining. Um, that's like it's a difficult, and people don't realize when they're playing games at home, and they think like, oh, this thing that you're struggling with is so easy. Like if you had a camera on you while
I
you were doing
know,
that,
man.
it would be you would be like this.
I know. And I get all excited. I mean, I see that I have the chat up and I want to say hi to the folks. And so you just get so
Yeah.
and then you lose some of the stuff. Oh, that's funny.
But to speak to the cultivating the personality thing, like I love heels. I love buffoon characters. So it's a natural inclination for me to play that kind of character if I'm doing like improv stuff.
Yeah.
So like I just leaned into that because it's very easy for me to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I've built that reputation on the show. And I think because of the like disparate nature of like I was this game design guy and now people think I'm this idiot, I was kind of struggling with that because I'm like, no, I'm not actually dumb, you guys. Like this is for the show. But there was a point where, I sort of had to put my money where my mouth is in terms of like when I say like I'm doing a show where I had to accept like no, I'm doing a show. Like Arin, realize that people aren't like looking at you and being like you're an idiot. They're looking at the show and being like this character. I
Yeah.
mean, they might just be saying Aaron's an idiot, but like what they
They
really mean is what they're seeing on this show,
Yeah,
and
they're
they're expecting.
responding to what you're putting out there, and they're
Yeah,
responding in kind because they're enjoying it and they love the fact that you're such a,
yeah.
yeah, that you're putting out this energy. That's so funny. Yeah,
So there are a lot of people I think that probably do think that like that's who I am as a person, which is fine because I'm never going to meet these people.
right, right.
But like there was a long period of time where I had to accept that like this is how people view you. And so there was a point in the middle where I was sort of like, I don't know, I was frustrated with that, and I would kind of like try to prove otherwise, but and I think that might have been making the show a little worse. So now I completely lean into it, and like
Yeah.
I will manifest it. Like I'll literally like set up bits where I can pay them off where I'm like an idiot.
Oh, that's
There's
great.
there's this famous thing with me. There's a lot of compilations called Instant Karma that many of them are, I don't want to say manufactured, but they're definitely like I know what's happening. Like I'm doing this on purpose. where, I'll be hyper confident about something and then immediately
You
fuck
get
it up. That's like a famous bit with me. So
Oh, that's good. I saw a thing the other day. One of our fans. I think this was, in fact, it was a couple of months ago, I guess, before we came to your office. But someone shared with us one of your game simulator games. So I watched. It was the forklift operator that
yeah,
you guys did, and I watched. I think I watched the whole thing. I just had, and then you guys started riffing on a song, this forklift
yeah,
operator song about killing your dad with a forklift and had to rub out your mom and all this. And then
yeah,
I don't know how this works, and maybe you have to tell me, but somebody took all the audio that you guys did because it was just sprinkled throughout. It was not an actual song. You were just goofing around,
yeah,
and then they made a song out of it,
yeah.
and it's freaking great. And did you guys have to do extra work for that, or did they just take
Nah,
they just
man.
took that and made that?
That's the kind of stuff that's
It's
a little bit of
unbelievable.
magic about what we do. We were talking about the animations earlier, like that was, and maybe it was because I was nudging people in that direction, but like we get people who make animations of our audio like all the time. And there
Yeah.
was definitely like in like 2016, there was like the height of it. But at the same time, there were people like amateur musicians and stuff that were just like making little remixes. Like they've been doing that for
Oh,
since the beginning,
it was
like
so
there's
charming. I mean, I've played it for my whole family a number of times. It's so funny. It's so great. So, you've got this, a couple things. At what point were you? I'm sure there had to be a moment with your fans and comments and all that I'm sure even as a producer and as a business person, you're having to check the comments just to make sure things are good. How do you done it all, huh? Okay.
nope.
So when did you divorce yourself from that? Because I'm sure that
Uh
was a ugly, there had to be a moment where you're like, oh, geez, I can't do this anymore.
yeah, it was years ago, man. And
Okay.
I only just recently quit all social media. So Twitter was my vice. Um and it was killing me. It's just so bad for your brain.
Yeah.
And
My son wants to get on Instagram. He's making a huge push. He's 14.
that's
And
so
he wants
tough.
so bad to be on there. And he doesn't even know why he wants to be on there.
I know.
And
It's so funny too, because that's like because I don't have any kids and like I don't really have any plans to have kids.
yeah, you
But
say that now. I didn't think
if
I did either.
but
I was late 40s when it happened.
when I think about it though, that's the one thing that stresses me out. There's nothing about being a dad that stresses me out other than like what am I going to do about social media?
Oh,
Because I
just
know at some age there's going to be a pull and I don't want to be like no.
well, it's not even social. I mean, the social media is the least of it as far as I'm concerned, because what's happening, I don't want to get on this road, but it's you give them an iPad so they can play some games, right? It's a way to
Yeah,
babysit them a little bit. But then that iPad becomes,
everything.
it becomes Roblox, it becomes
Yeah.
YouTube Shorts, it becomes all these things. And so we're all on our pads, all on our phones, and a lot of the time I'm on here and I'm doing work and I'm doing, I've got a lot of stuff on that phone that's not, you know, killing time, but all they're doing is killing time. And it's just
Yeah.
taking away whatever it would be to go outside and screw around, to read books, to do anything to kind of move your. And again, it's funny. We'll say, get off your screen so we can go downstairs and play video games. I mean, we want to if we can do something together, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just that mind suck of it. There's nothing about it that is, challenging them or so anyways, that's I'm not sure what that's
Yeah.
going to be like in the next 10, 15 years, but
And that's, that there's like it as you say, like we go stop looking at bad screen and come downstairs and look at good screen, right? Like there's like an inherent hypocrisy where like I
totally.
can sit here and tell this story about my life where I was sitting in front of a computer screen for most of it. And then that ended up making me very successful. So
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
like it's tough to come out of it. But that's also why, aside from like what it's doing to me personally, it almost feels like I should be an example for because I know, like, you ask anybody, and it's like, is social media good for you? It's like, no. There's nobody's going to be like, yeah, of course. Like,
Yeah, I know.
everybody knows it's terrible. So it's like, why this facade? Why,
Yeah,
like we need it? Like we don't. None of
yeah.
us need it. And it's weirdly, and this is probably getting into the weeds a little bit too much, but we had this realization kind of with Game Grumps where we had all these social media platforms. I mean, we still do and we still post on them, but like we were putting a lot of stock in them. And then we sort of realized like anytime we say anything on the show where we're like, hey, check out our merch or we're selling tickets to live shows or whatever, it's like 10 times more effective than if we post on Twitter or whatever, because that's the avenue that people are like, they don't give a shit about social media. Like there's this
Mm,
there's this trick we play on ourselves where it's like it's really important
yeah.
and all this stuff. It's like it's not. It's
Yeah, that's good to know. Well, I'm gonna have to share this section of the interview with my son. Sorry, bud. Aaron says no.
I mean it's true. And like, if you're connected enough, first of all, I have been calling and texting people so much more since I've been off Twitter because that was my big excuse, was like it's how I keep in touch with people that I'm like acquaintances with and I'm
Mm,
not like super close. But even the people I was super close with, I wasn't calling them and texting them and stuff. I was like, I would send them a message on Twitter or whatever, and like, respond to something they posted on Twitter. Haha, that was my interaction with them for the day.
yeah, yeah.
But now that I'm like,
Disconnected.
yeah, it's like I hesitate to say words like that, like disconnected or isolated, because it seems so negative. But it's like, uh, ironically, I'm more connected to them than I ever was because now I just call and talk to them and catch
Yeah.
up. And the funny thing is that one of the things that like started leading me down the road of like maybe I should quit social media is there was, I don't even remember what it was because it was so benign, but there was some like hot take that was going around, and I remember like a good friend of mine posted this thing that was like, yeah, fuck this thing, whatever, blah, it sucks. And I was like, oh, and then I ran into them later and I was like, oh yeah, and that topic came up and was like, oh, I saw that you said like you hate it and it sucks. And they were like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I just thought,
But it felt like
it's,
a completely strong opinion on
yeah,
the way it was presented in that post,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So it's
And
like you never,
yeah.
there is a sense of on social media, it's like you have to plant a flag on one side or the other. And the moment that you're in the middle, like people can assume one way or the other about you. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to just be like, this is it, and don't debate me,
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to like, well, I kind of have this nuanced view on things, and like it's like, oh, so does that mean you think this? And it's like,
Like
no,
I
of course
don't.
not.
Yeah, you think mine
Yeah.
isn't nuanced? I'm
So I have much richer conversations with people now
That's
because I
good.
actually talk directly to them, and there's no threat of somebody coming in and being like, well, I'm seeing this conversation and assuming something about you now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, I'm off of it. I mean, except for, a little bit with our thing, but it's
yeah, it's
only for
purely promotion at this
yeah,
point.
exactly. Yeah. Um, couple things before a couple things. So tell me, like, what games you play everything. You guys play everything. And so how do you choose your games and what are the games that you found? I guess this probably changes over the years or maybe doesn't, that really make for the best kind of interaction between you and Dan and like what do you gravitate towards? What that makes a good Game Grumps show?
It's such a yeah, it's a process that I feel like we're still doing intense research on to this day, because we obviously we know a lot about our audience and what does well and what doesn't, but at the same time there's this sense of like we never know, because like for example, we have a series, there's a game called Danganronpa that is this extremely long narrative driven Japanese like murder mystery kind of game. um and we have a fan base that loves us playing that game. And when we were playing it, the channel was doing like some of the best numbers that we've ever done. And ironically, you look back on it and it's like the views on those episodes aren't super good. But it's like there's something about the effect of
Oh,
that the super fans are watching, and so like all this other content is being lifted, like the legacy content is being, there's all this weird data that like you just think like, oh, this episode did well, so this does well. But that's not the case with a channel like ours where we have over like 7,000 uploads or something. There's like a whole other ecology to it that like you have to study almost. So in terms of like what makes really good content for us, uh anything that's narrative, anything that pits us against each other in a way that's not like super frustrating,
yeah.
um those are usually like some of the best. And then anything that's like weird where we can just kind of react to how weird it is. But again, there's like the people who really like Danganronpa might not like when we play Wheel of Fortune. We play Wheel of Fortune all the time. That's one of
Yeah.
our favorite games to play on the show. There's just like different types of fans. So it feels like kind of a juggling act where we kind of have to like
I
keep
I
everybody
remember talking
happy.
to you guys when we first got there, and I'm thinking, gosh, how many of your fans are going to want to watch an old FMV game? And I think Dan was saying there are just so many factions of your
Yeah.
fan base. There, some of them won't be into it, but there's going to be a lot that is, and it looks
Yeah.
like that group found, found that, they found that episode, and sure enough, they seem to really like it. But yeah, that's
Yeah. And there's also the surface level element of like, we do a show that's 25 minutes. That's a lot of time. Especially nowadays with like, you can just scroll through YouTube shorts and each one's 30 seconds or whatever. So it's like getting people in even just to watch it. It's like we'll put out some of our funniest. I mean, the Phantasmagoria episode is a great example. Like it
and that
is
was long,
so,
most of yours, right? We did it was an hour and a half. So you said
yeah.
stuff is
So and it's like such a specific type of thing. And it's like, who are these, like a lot of our fans are like, who are these people that they have on the show? Like
yeah,
maybe I don't want to watch that because of that.
yeah,
And like, but like that's some of our funniest, like that episode is so funny.
yeah, it
Um
really is.
so it's like it's tough to figure out, juggle like, okay, maybe we should play this because we know people will want to click on it to watch it, and like maybe we should play this because we know this is going to be funny, but it might not bring in as many people because it doesn't have as much like curb appeal.
Yeah,
uh
that do you finally just go down the road of I don't care, I want to play this game, and I mean, do you finally have to just sort of throw it out the window and just play what you
yeah,
want to play?
I think like I think it's like a 50-50. I think it's like a one for them, one for us kind of
Yeah,
thing where it's like I know we're gonna have fun playing this, and I know there's a part of the fan base that just really enjoys that aspect of it.
yeah,
So we're just gonna play this thing and it's gonna be fun for us. And also we should also play this game that people have been requesting us to play that I don't know anything about and Dan doesn't know anything about, and we're not necessarily super interested in it,
yeah.
but we know we can make it funny and people will watch it. So um
And
there's definitely a give and take to it.
yeah, and one of the things that comes up a lot with us, but I see it happening a ton with you guys is, the games that you start and don't finish. And then a lot of people are like, "Oh, I wish you were finishing the game." Is there a what's the decision process that goes into, playing a game? Do you just do a couple episodes sometimes and then let go, or do you just do one offs? I guess it's a little bit of everything, but what is the thing that makes you decide to take it all the way through?
uh we have to be really enjoying it. That's huge because games are long, man,
I
and
know, yeah.
we only have so much time. It's like we played Tears of the Kingdom for like 4 months or something, and we didn't even do a whole lot of like side stuff. We like kind of blazed through the game. So it's like there's only so much time. We're not streamers, we're not like sitting down for 6 hours a day and playing it and then you make a highlight reel. Like we play the whole game for 25 minutes every day. So I think that's sort of something that's limiting about our format, is that we really, really have to be choosy about what long games we play. And it's usually stuff that we know people are going to stick around for, or that people are like dying to have us finish. Like Danganronpa is a good example of that. Like
Just
whenever we stop playing Danganronpa, it's all people talk about. It's like,
wow,
when are you going to play Danganronpa again?
wow,
So
huh?
we we are listening. Like I said that I don't read the comments. We have our team reads the comments. So like
Sure, yeah,
they're paying attention to what people are saying and what people want. And
right, right.
I just don't want to do that because I don't want to see the one that's going to hurt me for a month.
I know, I know. You can read like, 100 amazing things, and then one person says, "Well, what's the deal with that
Yeah.
thing that you did that
Something
moment?"
that cuts right into your
Oh man,
insecurity and you're like,
totally.
ah, everybody sees me. I'm a sham.
Exactly. So the tours, how did that come about? And does that I imagine, well, I don't want to tell me how it came about.
So Brent was hot on it. Especially because there was this thing that happened called adpocalypse. Um, I mean, it wasn't called, it's just people called it that. But essentially there was this big like mass exodus of advertisers from YouTube, because of like a few key things that had happened on the platform where like people were being pretty racy. Um, and so like ad dollars on YouTube videos just like, and they like kind of recovered, but for the most part it's like it never has been what it was before that point. Um, so there was a big effort to come up with like different venues of revenue, and Brent had, to his credit, been pitching touring for a lot, and I was against it because John and I did a thing at a convention once where we basically did like our show but in front of an audience, and I don't think it went very well. um and I thought it was kind of awkward, and so I was like, no, this format doesn't really work. And but Brent was very much like, no, trust me, we should do it, we should do it, trust me. So we um booked out the Hollywood Improv for 2 nights, and when we put tickets up for sale, it like sold out in like 3 minutes. It was like ridiculous, and we were like, oh, okay. And that was kind of our first clue, like maybe we should be a little more serious about this. um but we basically did the same. We went on stage and we played Mario Maker. It was 2 levels that nobody had ever seen before that our friend Ross made. um and there's just like 100 people in the room, and and it was just like hanging out with them. And but the biggest thing was a lot of people had brought things for us. So a lot of people like right up on the stage, because the seating was just like right up to
Yeah,
the fucking stage.
yeah.
um and they had stuff, and we were like, oh, and we were like taking things from the audience, and like I think at one point we like brought somebody up to like try to beat the level and stuff. And that was the stuff that felt really special and made the show really interesting, as opposed to us just playing video games. And so we were like, we gotta, if we do a show, we gotta do like an audience participation show.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
um so it was just kind of like a stroke of mad genius where our first show was like, we just play Mario Party with the audience. And every time we have a mini game, we bring up somebody from the audience and we pit the audience against each other, split them into teams.
Yeah,
And that show format fit in a backpack. It was a Wii
yeah.
U, the controllers, and like some cables that we needed. And then usually the venue had the rest of the stuff that we needed, like a projector and everything. Um, and so it was like the cheapest show to do. It was so easy, and it was fun. As like everybody loved it. Like it was so much fun to show. And like I would have like family members show up who like had no idea what I did, and they're not the kind of people that would like blow smoke up my ass. They're fucking New England, like, get out of here, you fucking weirdo, like. So they would come to the show and they watch it and they were like, that was so much fun. I'm like, what? And they're like, I didn't know what to expect. Like I thought it was gonna be this weird, stupid thing, but it was so. And so like we were like, we have something here. So we toured that around, and then after that we
That's great.
designed our own show with our own games and our own plot and everything, and it had a bunch of like inside jokes and stuff, and it had this whole like character arc. And
Do you
um
have different do you have different shows that you do in rep, or are you doing the newest show now? I mean, are you still doing the older version, or have you moved on to the new one now?
yeah, we designed our own version of which is it's in concept, it's like the same show
Yeah.
where we bring people up and they do little mini games, and
But
then
now
we
they're your
tally the
games, the
score
games
up.
that you've created
Yeah,
for.
so
Yeah.
we made all the games and then we wrote a story around the whole show. So like in between the games, there's this like plot that's going on.
Great, man. That's so great.
Um, it's so fun, and it's like it's so easy to do, and like
How long did
you
it
know,
take to put that whole
uh,
concept together and
that
to
was like
create the games?
6 months of development
It's a
for
lot.
that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was worth it, man. It was a really really fun show to do. But that's linked into the first couple shows we did for Game Grumps. We did, oh my god, I forgot the fucking name of the company. With a touring company and a touring agency,
Yeah.
and we weren't super happy with the deal that we got. We felt
Yeah.
like it was a little crooked. Um,
So maybe it's
so
good that you don't remember the name.
yeah, but we talked to a booking agent and we were like, I feel like we could do this on our own, and we did. And then after it got pretty smooth. Brent was basically like, we should just make this a company and we should just
Um,
like bring other people on the road and do like purely YouTube stuff.
oh, is
Because
this Real Good Touring? Is this?
yeah,
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you about that too.
because all like influencer YouTuber shows at that time, there were a couple companies that were doing it, but they were like really they were milking it. It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
put them on the stage, make them do a couple jump flips, do like a fucking 5 hour meet and greet, and that's the show, right? Like it's not an actual proper show. So
Yeah.
our whole thing was like we help you design a show that's actually a show, and when people come and they're like, wow, I didn't know what to expect from a YouTuber show, and that was like a really entertaining, fun night out.
Ah.
Um,
And do you grab people or grab, YouTubers that have an extensive enough audience that they can do a solo, or do you put a couple of
yeah,
acts together? So it's maybe, are they all doing their own solos, or are they touring together?
yeah, I'd say the biggest draw is when it's somebody who's just like known for their thing and they do
Yeah.
their thing. Um, it can work to do like ensemble shows, but it's a lot harder to sell tickets
Yeah.
because you're asking. It's a weird dichotomy where like you're asking a lot for somebody to like spend money and go and spend their night doing a thing.
Yeah. Sure.
So if it's like they know for like half the show they're going to see somebody that they don't give a shit about, then it's like they're probably not going to go. But at the same time, it's like the easiest sell to be like, hey, you already like me, come see me,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm there in front of you, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I should come
Yep.
talk to you. I mean, I think that, Tori and I should organize a tour. We could probably get tens and tens of people to come see us, and I'm sure we would be huge in very small living rooms.
Oh no, you could probably do some clubs and stuff. That'd be pretty fun.
No, it's funny. I run a company to hearing you talk about your touring and watching. I watched a clip of one of the ones. Is it the one where it's sort of the
Yeah,
medieval time?
that's
Okay,
the
it's
most recent one. Yeah.
super fun. It's really, really great. I run a company called Letters Aloud. It's a kind of I don't know, it's like a cross between the Moth podcast and like I don't know, it feels like a live podcast. And what I do is I take letters that were written by famous people throughout history. And then I find a theme. And like I say, the most recent one we do it's rejection letters. It's called Thanks, but No Thanks. And so it's just nothing but rejection letters all night long to all the biggest, U2, Jimi Hendrix, all these people that, got rejected along the way. And I
Wow.
put them in an order, that kind of just takes the audience on a little bit of a loose journey, like from those early rejections when you're first starting out to, you
Hmm.
know, to college rejections, to girlfriend rejections, to all the stuff,
Yeah, you
and
got to tell a story.
it ultimately tells the story of perseverance and of we all go through this, but if you can stick through it. And then I give them to professional actors to read out loud. And then we have like a musician on stage, and then we have a huge, screen in the background. And it sounds very much like what you guys do, where we're super simple. We just walk in, we got music stands. We have a projector. We have a really, really cool slideshow that, you see the images of the actual letter and the handwriting and all that. and we just travel around and we do the show, and it's a really fun, it's in a much more NPR like, our audience is a little bit, you know, I just call it the NPR crowd, but there is a similarity when I hear you talk about what you guys do, except for the fact that we don't sell out every in 3 minutes, and we don't have quite the crowd that you guys have. But
Oh, it's a different time now. Post COVID, it's like there's a really strange relationship with like YouTubers and live shows and stuff.
when are you doing? You guys just came off of a big one, right? Didn't you guys do one back a few months ago?
Yeah, yeah, we did a I think that yeah, the American wet leg was our most recent
Yeah.
leg.
You have another one
Um,
coming up, or are you guys already planning ahead? Or are you waiting?
I'm doing a show with a bunch of other people called Scribble Showdown. Um, where it's like a bunch of animators and it's like an animation kind of game show, and I'm like the host
Fun.
of the show. It is a really entertaining show. It's one
Is
that
it
we
new, or you've been
designed.
doing that one for a while too?
So this version of it is new. We've been doing a clean version of it for years, but now this is like an 18 plus version, um, where a lot of the topics and all, we're it's a lot of the audience for the original one was like kids
Yeah.
and
Okay.
stuff.
So
We
yeah,
wanted to
you
do
have
one
to you have
where we
to.
didn't have to worry about saying fuck, so
Oh, it's great. And where are you guys gonna? Where you start?
it's mostly West Coast and then like a little Texas and I think like Oklahoma or something.
Fun.
But it's kind of like a little a short beginner leg to see how
Okay.
it does.
And are you guys? I'm sure you took a little bit of a break for the holidays. Are you full scale back? I mean, you had a meeting today before you met me. Or you have a full scale? Are you back? Hit the ground running?
Back in action, baby. That's 2023 was very difficult because there was a lot of touring. There was a lot of like different events that were happening where we had to like put a lot of time aside to uh to not work or to work on something else. And then when we come back, it's like record,
Yeah.
meetings, make sure things are set up so the next time we go on tour, we're good.
Yeah.
Uh so this is actually the first year where it's like we don't really have anything like that going on. So it's gonna be odd because it feels like it's been in like stress mode for the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You can use a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah,
But
for
it doesn't
sure.
seem like you give yourself that much. You'll find something else to fill it, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's definitely how my brain works. I gotta have something. I've
Yeah.
gotten better at like relaxing and doing that kind of thing, but
Hey, you've been sitting on a couch with me for 2 hours, so I mean that's not bad. That's relaxing a little bit.
yeah, it's nice.
Um,
It just so happened to be a night where it's like I don't have shit to do tonight, so this is great.
well, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Before I let you go, I had a number of questions that some of my fans wanted to ask, but we kind of covered all of it. But a dear friend of mine's daughter, Kauri, is a an animator and an artist, and
Oh, awesome.
she had a question. And I thought it was a good question, and she was just curious. I know you're not doing it as much these days, but she wanted to know when you were drawing, what you do to practice, and most especially when you have art block. She was calling it, what do you do to get out of art block? And
Mm,
what were some of the tips and lessons that really stuck with you along the way?
yeah. It's a great question. It's one of the most common questions I get, and it's like one of the most common struggles in my
Mm.
life too. My biggest thing, I feel like it varies from person to person, but my biggest thing has always been watching terrible media, consuming terrible media, whether it's a book or a show or whatever. Um, I just there's something about it that is just like immediately puts my brain into a mode of like I could do that so much better. How if somebody like this can get this made, why am I so hard on myself about,
Yeah, that's great.
like it's just it's like so invigorating to watch and then the other thing to be a bit more I feel like I'm being cruel about this, but like to be a bit more generous is like a lot of the people who make bad media make these like bizarre decisions that are kind of inspired, where you're like, oh wow, nobody does that,
And if
but
and if I did that, if I made that weird choice that I like, but better in terms of
yeah,
quality, I can take the choice and then make a better quality version of that. Or
yeah. So
that's great. I love the
this
idea of looking at stuff that is not good to take you out of this need to do something perfect. You
yeah,
know,
because it's like, you can watch whatever perfect movie that you're obsessed with like over and over again, and it's like, of course it feels insurmountable. You're like, this is genius, how could I ever live up to this amazing piece of artwork? But like, you watch some garbage and you're like, oh, that was fun, man. If only they did this and like changed this, and maybe, and like that character's so cool the way they look, and
yeah.
I love it. It
Oh,
always gets me back on track, is watching terrible media.
I love it. I love it. Well, Aaron, hey man, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me, and it's really fun talking to you. It's really it's a bizarre thing that I've somehow been able to rub elbows in this world that I knew nothing about 2 years ago, and it's just it's a cool adventure that we're on, and I'm glad to kind of be in a little corner of this universe.
Yeah, man, this is fun. Thanks for having me. This was a nice journey down memory lane.
Good. Now
I,
I've got the bookends. I feel like it's complete now. I got both you guys on the channel, and so we
oh, that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
Dan was on this too. God, I wonder, now it makes me want to watch his and be like,
Yeah, you should check it out.
I wonder what his was like. What did he talk about?
Well, you talked longer. That's good. You got an little extra time in.
Oh, hell
Um,
yeah.
um, so I guess the other question, and then we can, this is no pressure because really, truly could not. I don't want to say I couldn't care less. It doesn't. I don't care, but I know that my fans are very curious if Phantasmagoria 2 is going to get any more love
we
from the Game Grumps.
we literally just talked about that yesterday. So there's we'll
I'll
see.
let it go at there. So the fact that
There
you're
there
talking about it, that's good.
there is an interest for sure, because that was such a fun episode to do.
That was. I wish I was nearby. I mean, maybe if you ever do something again, I could. Tori and I could just come in on an intercom and listen to you guys and pipe in a little.
Let's let's stay in touch.
Yeah, let's stay in touch, shall we? Yeah, that sounds good. All right, man. Well, it's a great talking to you, and I hope we stay in touch. I know we're Northwest pals these days, so that's a good thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Always going back and forth. So
Yeah, for sure.
let's hey, you have a great one. Thanks again for having me. Oh, what's the name? Should I do like a promo so I can be like, you're listening
Oh
to
yeah. Let's do something like we're Conversations with Curtis. Do you get whatever you want to say? You're listening. You're watching Conversations with Curtis with whatever. I mean, I don't. I should have had a whole script written out for you. That's why I have 10,000 subscribers and you have 10 million subscribers.
I'm, I'm Aaron from Game Grumps, and you're watching or listening to Conversations with Curtis.
Nice. All right.
Subscribe right now. Subscribe to it. Do you have a Patreon or something? Go to the
I got
Patreon.
Patreon too. Patreon. Yeah.
Patreon.com/Conversations with Curtis, I'm assuming.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Have a good rest of your night, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, man, you too.
All right. Bye.